5 ways to improve your health with upgrades in your house.
Yeah, we want to keep our home a great place to live.
And we want to be well now.
Right now.
You're listening to the #1 health and wellness podcast in Activa Plaza in Heber City, Utah, where the community health and wellness is located. Dr. Rod Dummar.
I like how you landed that one. That was very nice.
You were pretty excited for a while.
Yeah.
You are a functional medicine doctor, a chiropractic physician. What else are you?
I practice Chinese medicine, so I'm trained in Oriental medicine and chiropractic medicine. And so I apply natural strategies for our health. That's my objective, to be able to help as many patients as possible, to be dependent on medication and drugs as little as possible.
Yeah, and that's what drew me to you as a patient, and now we have a podcast together. And I kind of pitched you the idea, like I follow people on social media, and they're like, get a filter for your shower, right? It's going to be good for your liver. Yeah. And then thinking about mold and what's in the air, and I'm like, man, what upgrades, because I'm sure it gets expensive and it gets complicated. What upgrades would you suggest to your patients to be healthier at home?
Yeah, well, when you think about the upgrades, it's like, which upgrades or what type of things should I be doing to improve aspects of my health? So we have things that contribute to our health, which is things that we drink, things that we eat, things that we breathe, our environment, the place that we sleep, because we're there for a full 8 hours, right? And then, is there any sort of exposure in any of our electronics, or even our furnace or our carpet, or any of the materials that, like the paint we used to have, and like if you have a home from the 1960s or 70s that was painted or remodeled around that time, you could have lead paint, right? So there's a lot of different exposures that you could have as well. So we want to think about it from that context and say, okay, what can we do to improve each of those areas? So the first being, I guess, water, or being, what do we drink? How do we upgrade our drinking, or the things that we're consuming as far as liquid in our home?
I'm also interested in, and I know I want it always to be simplified, if I could do one thing, can you give me the first thing that you would recommend? And maybe that's the low-hanging fruit of what I'm going to use the most or spend the least on, or if I'm going to spend a lot on, will make the biggest impact.
Mm-hmm.
Is that water?
So, yes, it is water, because water is the cleanser. Water is it will clean, it will clear debris. It's meant to basically clear sediment from our body, or clear toxins, pathogens, heavy metals. It's literally what allows our body to be able to have the ability to detoxify or eliminate stuff. So if we don't have water, we're done. In fact, our bodies are 70% water.
Right.
And so the quality of that water, as we're delivering it every single day, matters. And so many of us actually consume sodas, fizzy drinks, caffeinated drinks, lots of drinks that are really not the best for us. Or they have bromide, they have other chemicals, PCBs, plastics, a variety of different things in them that act as endocrine disruptors. And endocrine disruptors can act like hormones, and they can throw our hormone balance off. So even if you're like, hey, what can I do for hormones to help balance my hormones? This is a really great place to start. Say, hey, let's make sure that I'm getting my water on point, and I'm not consuming water that is contaminated, or water sources.
So it looks like, and we put an outline together here, whole home water filtration.
That's your number one thing at home, if you can do that. And of course, for some people, or their place in life, like a student. I was a student for a while, moving to different apartments. I didn't really have the opportunity to be able to say, yeah, let's throw a whole home water filtration system in. It was cost prohibitive for me as a student, and it just wasn't something that I could do. So I have put two options. I
Okay.
have two options for
Because
people.
I live in an apartment, so I'm wondering, okay, what option?
So if you're not like in a space, if you're in an apartment, you're renting, and you're
Right.
not like, hey, I can't do a whole home water filtration system, then you're going to need to do a water filter of some sort, right? So we did a little research and looked around, and I've done this over a number of years as well. The water filtration system that I really like, and this one actually filters really well, and it can filter cesium. So cesium is actually from fallout of nuclear waste.
Okay.
Okay, so if there is a nuclear, and we're not dealing with nuclear right now in our community, but if there is some sort of nuclear fallout, this filter would actually be the one that you'd even want to use in order to clear the cesium out of there, so you weren't drinking radioactive material. Okay.
Which one is this?
So this is a portable water filter. It's called the brand name is Hiscan. So it's Hyskhan. And guess what the price point is on this?
Ridiculous.
$35.
Oh.
$35.
Okay.
So this is a student's dream right there. If you're a student, if you have kids who are living in an apartment, buy them this water filter. Buy it now. It's a great water filter, and it's a good way for them at least to be getting some of the chlorine and the fluoride and the heavy metals and chemicals out of their water when they drink it.
So that's like a pitcher, or is it something that goes on your faucet?
Yeah, it's those Brita filters as well.
Yeah.
That's another one a lot of people use. Brita does a decent job. It's not as good as this other one.
So we'll link
in my
this
opinion
below in the podcast notes.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's Hyskhan is the brand name of this water filter. And we can put more information in those show notes. Now, the other one, the whole house water filtration system,
Right.
Aquasana. I like Aquasana. That's the company that I've used for my home. We have a fairly sophisticated water filtration system in my home. And you have to know, too, that you're going to probably want to have some strategy for how to keep the water pressure up, right? So when you push all this water through the filtration system, and then you have high demand for water, well, the water filtration system may not be able to keep up on the pressure because it's not getting through the filter as quickly as it needs to, okay, in order to keep the demand up. And so your pressure is likely going to be low if you're using a whole home water filtration system. So what some people will do is they'll have like a vat container at a certain spot that the water filtration system will fill up, and it'll be elevated somewhere in the home. And then when people start drawing from the water, it's pulling from that source first so that it can have the pressure with it. Does that make sense?
And that makes total sense. So it sounds like there's a lot to the whole home water filtration system. If we're talking about drinking water, I think it's important to also talk about shower water, because I like I said, I was reading this blog post about it on Instagram,
Yes.
and he said it was a big deal and it affects your liver, and I'm wondering if you have any suggestions there.
Absolutely. So you can actually get shower head filters. You can get a shower head filter, and that's a great thing to do. Now, especially if you're not going for the whole home. So my whole house, even my spigots that go out of my house are filtered.
Oh, boy.
Okay? So if I'm watering stuff and I plugged into the house, everything on my house is filtered. What goes to my dishwasher, what goes to my clothes washer, It's all filtered. That's a whole home filtration system. Okay. Now, as a result, when I shower, obviously I don't have to worry about that. But if I'm using the pitcher, if I'm using the Hiscan option, then I'm not, when I use the shower, right, then I'm not filtering my water. So in that case, you could go pick up, and I don't have a brand name for this, but we can put one on the show notes as well. I have looked at a few of them. I haven't needed to use it myself because of what I've done, and I hadn't previously looked at that. But it's a fantastic thing to do. So water filtration system or a shower head filter.
Right. That makes sense.
Did you have a brand? You had mentioned.
No, I didn't have a brand. I was just sort of curious, like, what priority level should that be for me to get a shower filter?
Well, you should shower
Assuming one
occasionally
showers once a day.
If you shower every day and you're running water over your entire body, and your body takes up water.
Yeah, like what's
it's
happening?
It's not like we're just brushing water off of us.
Okay.
And so if we have chlorine, fluoride, if we have bromine, if we have all these heavy metals or chemicals in that water, we're taking it up into our skin, right? And it's just like at a swimming pool too. You're taking up those chemicals and metals into your body. But when you shower, and you're showering every single day, and on top of that, you're also applying certain shampoos, and you should be looking at those shampoos as well. And that's one of the areas to say, okay, what things in my home might be adding to my level of toxicity.
I'm just thinking of I like Epsom salt baths, but I'm just thinking of just hot water, long duration. If water is a problem,
you need to filter it. Yeah.
Seriously?
I would filter it. Yep.
Really? So what's wrong with just regular municipal water on your skin?
Well, it's the chemicals. We use a variety of different chemicals to treat it. Now, we also use ozone which is fantastic to use in our water treatment facilities. But it's not, they find that with ozone, they don't get to the level of elimination of certain bacteria that they want to get to, and so they use chemicals as well in the treatment. So it's not just ozone. If it were just ozone, which is essentially 3 oxygen molecules bound together, but ozone works like an antibiotic, antifungal, antiviral, and so it helps to clear the debris from the water, then it would be fine, right? And say, okay, well, that's no problem. But the treatment process that the water goes through uses a variety of different chemicals. And so if we're constantly bathing in chemicals as opposed to just water, or water and, like a mineral spring, obviously that's going to be a lot better for you. But it's the chemical exposure on a regular basis that you want to be careful of. Because my body is a balance. What my kidney and my adrenals do is they balance chemicals or minerals in the body. It's like sodium and potassium. And if we start to get too much sodium, even, let's say higher amounts of sodium in our body, well, that's going to become problematic for our cells, and our metabolic activity is going to be impeded because we're not able to exchange nutrients appropriately in the cells. So it is a big deal.
Yeah.
It is a really big deal. It's important for people to observe it properly and take care of it. So filtration of their shower, of their tub, of their bath, absolutely.
Okay, moving on. What you breathe is a big deal. Let's talk about that subject.
So a lot of people, especially up here right now, I had a guy who came to the home this morning. He said, I've been around. He drives around Utah doing a variety of different repairs and things. And he said, I noticed when I came up here into Heber, I started feeling the allergies. So he started feeling the allergies in the air. And he's like, there must be something in the air. And yeah, well, we're cutting. There's hay. There's all sorts of, and then we've got the blooming, and we've got all sorts of plants that essentially are putting their pollen out into the air right now, right? And we're all breathing that. So that can be problematic for a lot of people. It's just an extra exposure. Now, we should be able to endure a certain amount of that exposure, and our body should be able to clear it. But if we have, let's say, a repeated chemical exposure at home, right? And then we have a repeated chemical exposure in medicine or something, or we have a repeated chemical exposure in a variety of different ways through airplane, or I work out on the tarmac. It's like there's so many different places to get these chemical exposures. And then all of a sudden someone cuts their field or mows their grass. There's one more layer of exposure, right? And it doesn't have to be just another chemical. It's like, okay, this is a typical allergen that I might deal with. Our body says, okay, we don't need that in there, so the immune system upregulates to try to clear it, and that's why we get that histamine reaction, which is like the stuffy nose, the runny eyes, itchy eyes, and runny nose. So that's a very natural, normal process, but we need to be able to clear that, and we need to be able to keep any debris and toxic mold exposure or anything like that down as much as possible. So one of the things I recommend, especially during like fire, we talked about fires previously, like fire seasons where there's a lot of smoke in the air, or for seasonal allergies, things like that. A Remy halo. So Remy halo is essentially it's a peroxide emitter that goes right into your HVAC system, and UV light is emitted as well, which UV light is antipathogenic, so it's an antipathogen, so it helps to neutralize pathogens. But the peroxisomes or peroxides go out into the home, so they're blown through the HVAC system, and then anywhere where they reside on, they're going to disinfect that surface for you as well.
Do you need an HVAC professional to install that? Or
yeah, I would do that.
Okay, so this is
sure, you could install it yourself if you've got some of those skills, but I had an HVAC specialist install mine.
So it's one of those where it's worth doing right. And
yeah, you definitely want it done correctly for sure.
You mentioned a radon detector or evac system.
Yeah, so radon is actually a gas. It's a gas that's made essentially by the breakdown of uranium. So we're talking about a little bit of, it's not really like nuclear fallout, but it's the devolving of certain minerals, right? So the breakdown of uranium. So we have uranium as it breaks down, and it's throughout the entire ground. It's in the earth, okay? And we've found throughout the United States that at least 1 in every 15 homes has actually a fairly significant amount of radon. Now, radon consumption, like breathing radon gas, they've made equivalent to smoking like a pack or more of cigarettes a day. And you can actually measure, how much radon exposure you're getting. The greatest amount of radon exposure is likely going to be in like a basement, if you have a basement home. So if you do have a basement, this is even more important to get a radon detector. And in our home, we actually have a radon pump. So they'll create a tube. They'll drill down under your foundation, essentially, and then they'll have a pump that pumps up the radon and out of the house so that it's not pooling into your basement.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that was a thing.
And we got our home tested before, and we have people we can refer you to. So if you want that test, call us at the office here, or reach out to us via email, and we can give you the information of an individual that can do those tests for you.
So didn't you say there was also home air filters for rooms? Like, again,
Yes.
if I live in an apartment and I don't think I have access to my HVAC system, or I guess I do, the furnace, but
yeah, so you
I
want to
don't
make
really
sure
know.
with your furnace, you need to change that. You
Change
need to
the
make
filter.
sure the filter's changed at least every 3 to 6 months. Like,
is there a good filter you recommend?
you know what?
brand?
They're like a good HEPA filter is good. I don't recommend I don't have a recommendation. I would say talk to your HVAC guy and just say, hey, what would you recommend for allergies, right? Like, I'm trying to keep things as clean as possible. Because the other thing is you don't want like a really thick, crazy filter that's not going to allow the air to move very well, because your furnace is sitting there working, pulling the air in. So you have to have because otherwise you're going to tank your furnace, the motor on it, right? So it's got to be able to pull enough air in, right, and distribute it throughout the home. And if your filter is so thick and compact that it's causing problems with the furnace, well, or the blower, the blower, then that's a problem, okay? So I would ask an HVAC person, or ask the person, I would ask an HVAC professional and just say, what do you recommend? I don't want to power the furnace or the blower, but I do want to make sure that I can get enough pollen or allergens out of the air so that what we're breathing in the home is not essentially what's contaminating us outside.
Makes sense to me. All right. Mold exposure.
Yeah, so mold is something that we're finding, especially we find it a lot in more moist environments. Around here, in homes in general, there always seems to be some sort of drip or leak somewhere, and you have to be really careful and very attentive if there's any sort of drip or leak under the sink, sometimes from the bathtub, and so, or even out on the outdoor spigot somewhere, okay? Sometimes it can come like this winter when we had lots of ice, tons of ice dams where the snow would melt during the day a little bit, and then it would get just enough water moving to the edge of the roof, and then it would freeze at night, and then it would melt again and then freeze, and then we get this massive pooling of ice on the edge, and then it starts to get so heavy, and then it also starts just seeping down into the home itself. So ice dams can be really problematic for homes, and they can be a source of mold. So what do we do about mold, and how do we prevent mold exposure in the home? Well, one way is with your drywall. You can actually use lime plaster in your drywall, your gypsum. So when you finish drywall, I actually grew up doing drywall and plaster and stucco, and I would break up great big bags of lime and throw it in and mix it. That's one of the things that I did as a kid. But lime, what it does is it has the ability to harden, to create basically a stronger bond in the cement. Or if you mix it with gypsum, so gypsum is a typical, like the plaster in your home over the drywall. You can push a tack through it, right? But you can do a variety of different textural finishes and things with it. Well, if you add lime to that, it'll make it hard to where you actually can't push a tack through it. And it'll feel almost like a cement type of finish, or like an indoor stucco or plaster type of finish. And that's something that you can do. Now, the lime itself is obviously a naturally occurring substance, but it is antipathogenic and antibacterial and antifungal. So it will actually prevent your home from building up mold exposure, right?
So after the fact.
Yeah. Well,
so this already happened. The home is built.
Yes.
Is there anything you can do about mold now?
So if you have mold,
or you're worried about it, because I see that the lime in the drywall makes sense.
Yes. So right now, like with the finishing of the drywall, you'd have to finish it with mold. Or if you're doing like a repair or a remodel or something, you'd finish it with that lime, right? And that would help prevent the mold. The other ways to do that is there's a hypochlorous solution. So look at like your cleaning solutions. You want to take your cleaning solutions and try to dechemical them. And you're like, well, all my cleaning solutions are chemical. And yes, it's true, but we want to make them as natural as possible, like naturally occurring and safe as possible. And look at the chemical cupboard, because every home seems to have one of these. Look at your chemical cupboard and think about which of those products you feel the safest about. Maybe the safest about having your kids play around, right? And more often than not, we look at that chemical cupboard and I don't want my kids around any of these. And so if we're using those to clean surfaces, and we're using those chemicals to mop floors and to wipe walls and to wash clothes, but we don't trust our kids to be around them, to me that seems like a problem, right? It's not consistent. So what we need to do is say, how can we have a cleaning source that is something that we feel fairly safe with our kids maybe being around? Not that we would go, like expose them to it all the time. That's not what I'm saying. But we want it to be as minimally chemical and minimally problematic to our kids as possible. So our body actually creates this substance called hypochlorous acid. So hypochlorous, okay? And it also creates peroxisomes. Now, before I talked about peroxides with the Remy Halo, well, our body, our immune response will produce peroxisomes. And it's like basically kind of like the body producing hydrogen peroxide to get rid of and break down pathogenic factors that it finds throughout the body. But our body will also produce a substance at that same time called hypochlorous. So hypochlorous acid will clear the debris and break things down. And usually those two together result in, if you've ever seen like a little pus, that's kind of what it creates. It's breaking down the debris, the dirt, the pathogen, and trying to eliminate it from your body. So there is a solution that we can provide for patients as well. We can show them where to get it, but it's a hypochlorous home cleaning solution, and you can use that at home, but you can also do what is called a fogging of your home, where you could use, say, a humidifier or a diffuser, or there are also more professional foggers who will literally, if you know you have mold, they'll come and just fog the whole home in a significant way. But what it will do is you put it in a diffuser, the hypochlorous solution, and it will mist throughout the whole home, and it creates kind of a fog solution. And it seeps into the walls, into the cracks, into all the areas that the water would typically go as well in the mold, and it helps to clear that mold. So if you do have a mold exposure, or you're concerned about mold exposure, and you've already built your home and you're not able to do, okay, let's do finish with lime plaster, look at hypochlorous.
Okay, and then also where you sleep matters, which is stressful to think about because nobody wants to go out and buy a new mattress, but tell me what I need to know.
Okay, well, this is one of the things that we found super interesting, because when my kids slept in the crib, when we were first starting having children, we were trying to research everything. We wanted to make sure we had a good, clean, safe environment for them. Well, I had read a lot of research coming forward that there is some sort of relation between SIDS and chemical exposures from mattresses. And I had learned that mattresses actually off-gas. So they can off-gas. The chemicals that are in them can actually off-gas. So you're sleeping all night long. You could be breathing adhesive chemical, right? You could be breathing some of the plastics that were made.
Yeah, you think about it like
mattress.
It's just normal to be
you're like, I just
sleeping
sleep
on a mattress, right? This is what people do. But when you are in manufacturing settings and you realize they're not bad people, but the chemicals and the adhesives and everything that is used for a reason, because it's a affordable way to make a mattress comfortable, and it does all the things, and yet all those things are still true, that all those chemicals are synthetic things in a mattress that may off-gas for a long time, and
so we have to be careful with that. And so all we're saying there is with your upgrade here, it's look for a mattress that is going to have as minimal off-gassing as possible. So you want to be able to say, okay, I want to use like organic ingredients, or is there any way to minimize the amount of chemicals that were used in this process? And that I do have a few brands that is probably something you could look at, like Zen Haven is a brand that they like to be a little bit, now these may fall on the pricier side, and it might not be in your budget. So the idea is to find as minimally chemical-laden mattresses as possible, and even see if, hey, is this something that the company touts? Like, what's our dedication to kind of organic and nature as far as the products that they put into their mattress, right? There's another one that actually is pretty good. It's called Birch by Helix. And then plush beds. So those are some different ones to look at. And again, look for organic ingredients. Look for as few and minimal adhesives used as possible, and especially if you can find a good brand. And I'll do a little more background on this too. But finding a good brand, like some of these did, but that they'll tout, hey, we minimize chemical exposure and off-gassing by the products that we use in our bed.
A lot to unpack, as always, but a good place to start. And if they have further questions, they can reach out to your office, I'm sure. And I'm going to be the disciplinarian here and keep us under 30 minutes.
Good. Well, hopefully everybody enjoyed that and got some good tips.
I'm going to go get my water filter replaced. I'm going to look for a shower filter. And I'm going to think about that air purification as well. I'm going to get my filter replaced anyway.
There you go.
So thank you for the great advice.
Of course. You're welcome.
Dr. Ron Dummar, Heber
Thank
City,
you,
Utah.
everyone.
Be well now.
Namaste.
Namaste.